right, good morning guys. We just got out to the hangar. I dropped off my truck at Ford to get serviced, or actually repaired, for probably the 5th time this year that thing's been in the shop. I've been bleeding money into that truck. I think I'm honestly at almost 6 grand this year on repairs. So anyway, I'm well past due for a new truck. I ordered one over 3.5 months ago. It is finally in. So Ryan is being super kind and flying me down to Auburn to go pick up the new truck. What's your plan? We're gonna go with the Cub?
Yes, we're gonna go with the Cub.
Okay. Nice work. I am so pumped. I have not seen one in person. Wow. All right, I am currently stuck in 5-mile-per-hour traffic, bumper to bumper, on the way home, and it just happens to be that this traffic started just before the exit that would allow me to take the dirt or back way home. Kind of thinking, I do have a Raptor now, I probably shouldn't be sitting on the paved way home, so I think I'm gonna go ahead, make the diversion, and take the back way, the dirt way home. All I can say is this thing is ridiculous that this is a factory truck that I can take out here and drive like this. First time ever in it. So rad. I just blasted a puddle. Anyway, I'm a little bit like a kid in a candy shop right now. Alright guys, now I've had this truck for about 3 weeks now, and I honestly kind of contemplated whether it was even worth making a video about, because I know it's kind of a little off topic for this channel, but at the same time I know if you're into bush flying and backcountry camping and adventures like I go on, you're probably going to be interested in something like the Ford Raptor. And not to mention, every video that I've seen posted on YouTube about these things is pretty much just guys driving on city streets, flipping between exhaust modes and talking about how cool it sounds, when really we all know what we're interested in is the off-road capabilities as well as how it fits as being a well-rounded everyday truck. So like I said, I've had this thing for a few weeks now. I've got almost 3,000 miles on it, and I'm at the point now where I feel like I have enough time in the truck to give you guys my honest impressions and thoughts on the truck. Now before I get into too much of the review on this, I do want to give you guys a little backstory on how I ended up here. Back in early summer 2010, young and enthusiastic 21-year-old version of me ended up on our first bigger TV show. This was back when I had first built my first RC helicopter with a camera on the front. Really had no idea what I was doing, but we ended up on a TV show called the Torque series, which was the Traxxas Off-Road Racing Championship. Basically, it was a short course off-road racing series that we were covering for one of Discovery's networks. Now back then, in early 2010, the first generation of the SVT Raptor just announced, but it wasn't quite available yet. But Ford, being a sponsor of the event, sent out a few of their prototype or pre-production Raptors as recovery vehicles. So basically when one of the race trucks would break down, a Ford Raptor would run out and tow them off the track. I somehow weaseled my way into getting to ride in one of those Raptors on a short course track with one of the professional drivers from the series, and it was at that moment, over 11 years ago, that I said this is my dream truck. At some point, I want to own a Raptor. Now as things go in life and as practicality took precedence to all my wants, I never ended up getting the Raptor. My last few trucks have just been the F-150 with the EcoBoost, which I love that engine. So I know at some point in the comments here, I'm gonna get torn apart for not waiting for the Raptor R or getting a Ram T-Rex. Honestly, I'm a huge fan of the EcoBoost. I love this engine, and the fact that they just pumped a little more horsepower out of this one is awesome. This truck's plenty fast. I wanted something that was my old F-150 just with more off-road capability. So anyway, as my truck was giving me trouble throughout this last summer, I finally decided it's time for me to upgrade trucks, and with the Gen 3 Raptor just being announced, I went ahead and put an order in for one. It took about 4 months, but it's finally here. Now for people that aren't totally familiar with the Raptor, basically it's an F-150 with longer travel suspension and a beefed up chassis. The engine puts out a little bit more horsepower and it's tuned for the off-road environment. It makes like 15 inches of wheel travel in the rear, 14 in the front. It's got a 5-link rear suspension and it's got Fox 3-inch live valve shocks all the way around, which basically means that the shocks are able to, on the fly, adjust the rebound and dampening settings based on a bunch of other sensors that are in the truck. So the suspension's always adjusting and changing for your terrain, and you can set that in the settings. And I'm not here to tell you about just specs, but here's my honest opinion. And after driving it for this long, I think coming into the Raptor from the F-150 Limiteds, which is what I have been driving, which the Limiteds are the highest end trim of the F-150. They have the most features, the most luxury, and the most tech built into them. So going a couple steps down trim-wise to the Raptor, I honestly expected some compromise. Basically, I'd be giving up X, Y, and Z as far as comfort and feature-wise to get the more off-road capable vehicle, but I didn't find that to be the case. Honestly, on the road or on highway driving, this thing is as comfortable and as smooth and maybe quieter than my F-150 Limited was. Sure, the exhaust is a little louder, but on this truck, you're actually able to adjust it. There's a little louver in the exhaust, so you can go from quiet mode all the way up to Baja mode, which is closer to straight pipes. And I will say for a V6, this thing actually sounds really mean. But probably the most impressive thing to me is that this truck can be, like I said, a very comfortable, everyday driver, just like my other F-150 was. I mean, I'm turning 37-inch tires, driving that down the highway, and it's getting about the same gas mileage as my old truck. I'm running about 14 or 15 right now, kind of in town driving. Out on the highway, it'll probably do 16 or 17. But the impressive part is when you go and get off the road, turn that little dial and put it into Baja mode. Now this thing turns into a completely different beast. It's honestly like you turn a knob and you have a whole different truck. Now as far as how it handles off-road, this is what everyone's been waiting for, and I need to preface this by saying I'm not Robbie Gordon. I'm no professional driver. I have, however, owned a few razors in my time and actually raced my first one both in the desert as well as short course. Prior to that, back in high school, I used to do a lot of rock crawling. So while I'm not a professional driver, I do have some experience off-road. And all I can say is that this truck is almost 6,000 pounds. And when you're on the road, you can feel it. But something that they do when you switch it into Baja mode makes this truck feel so much lighter and so much more nimble than I ever expected. Now, I'm not someone that's gonna go out and try to set a high mark with launching this thing as big as I can and see what it takes to break it. That's just not in my DNA. You guys know me well enough to know that I do use my stuff. I'm not someone that's gonna pavement pound my Raptor. But what I can say is I'm blown away by what this thing handles as a stock truck off the assembly line that's DOT approved for road use. It's just amazing. I don't really have any off-road time in the older generations of the Raptor that had the leaf spring rear suspension, but what I can say is that I'm super impressed with the suspension on this thing. There's no hopping in the rear end. It's extremely compliant, and especially in Baja mode when it has the four-wheel drive turned on, this thing's just point and shoot. Now I know I mentioned that I have 37-inch tires on this thing, but I did not buy the 37 performance package. There's basically two versions of this truck. The standard truck is on 35s, and then they have the 37-inch performance package, which comes with obviously 37-inch tires. It had different wheels. It also had different suspension, being a little bit larger shock diameter, but they also reduced the up travel by 1 inch to accommodate the bigger tires. And the other thing that came with the 37 package was the Recaro seat package, which is basically different seats, but the only color those were available in was this navy blue that honestly looked like it was out of a United Airlines plane from the 1980s. I just honestly couldn't get on board with that weird navy color with the orange stitching. Just wasn't my jam. The other and probably more important thing is that Ford stated that the chassis had been changed on the 37 package to fit a full-size spare. So anyway, I did what Ford said you can't do, and I went ahead and put 37-inch tires on mine anyway, and I did put a full-size 37-inch spare. But for anyone that's thinking about doing this, just note that what you have to do with that spare, as you're raising it into position under the bed, you just have to shift it back towards the rear bumper as you're raising it. And then also I ran a ratchet strap around it to hold it back, because without that, it tends to slide forward into the panhard bar, which is no good. Now again, I haven't gone that hard on this thing, but I have gotten it airborne, and so far I've had zero rubbing with the stock shocks from the 35 package. So anyway, if you can't tell, I'm extremely excited about this truck. It's a lot of fun. It's got all the comforts of pretty much any other truck out there. I mean, it has all the features too. This thing will auto park, it lane centers on the highway. Once Blue Cruise is available, there's supposed to be 100,000 miles of US highway that this truck will drive hands-free, meaning you don't even have to hold on to the steering wheel. Obviously, it's got the adaptive cruise control, it'll back up a trailer, it's got 360 cameras, it does all the stuff that you would want out of a luxury vehicle, and it's just as comfortable on the road. But then when you want, you just switch the mode, and even if you're just in sport mode on the road or going into Baja mode off-road, it's a completely different truck. And the fact that this thing is covered under warranty to do all this stuff, including jumping it, is pretty unreal. So anyway guys, before I wrap this up, I do want to take a quick second to give a huge shout out and thank you to the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. And for those that don't know, Squarespace is the ultimate platform to build a website and run your business. You start with one of their award-winning templates and you tweak and craft it into your own personalized and professional looking website that works for both desktop as well as mobile. And Squarespace has features for literally every industry, so I don't care what it is you're trying to do, whether it's an online store, personal blog, professional photo gallery, honestly, anything you want to do, you're gonna be able to do with the Squarespace website. So if you haven't yet, head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to purchase, go to squarespace.com/Trent Palmer. It'll get you 10% off. Thank you again, Squarespace, for sponsoring this video, and you guys know the drill. Like this video if you do, subscribe if you haven't, come be my wingman, or would that be a driving, just call it a dirt wingman. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.